Chapter 20 of The Mandalorian, titled The Foundling, was the shortest episode of the series so far, but that doesn't mean it was any less impactful. It finally told us who saved Grogu from the Jedi Temple during Order 66, and I am thrilled with the answer, but we'll get to that soon. We pick back up at the Mandalorian covert as Bo-Katan watches every member training to be warriors, but Grogu sits alone on the beach playing with little rock crab things. I initially thought he was using the Force to move them around, so it was a fun reveal that there was more going on beneath the surface, which is true for Grogu too, as we will see. He is funny and adorable, but he's also 50, and he's been through so much. He has experienced tragedy that still affects him. I thought he was using the Force to move the rocks, but he doesn't do that in public very often because he is afraid. Din takes him to train with the other Foundlings, pitting him against Ragnar in a game of Mandalorian paintball, and we all know Grogu can take the other Foundling. We know what he can do. Bo-Katan even jokingly tells him to go easy on Ragnar, but Grogu has to be told it's okay to be himself in this moment. Din has to tell him it's safe to show the entire covert what he can do through the Force. I like this combination of Jedi and Mandalorian training happening. Grogu has chosen to stay with Din instead of continuing to learn with Luke, but no one in the covert seems to mind him using the lessons of their former enemies, because remember, the Jedi and the Mandalorians used to battle. Part of me expected the Armorer to have something to say about that, but throughout the episode, Grogu is treated completely as a Mandalorian. He is underestimated at first, but I think Ragnar and everyone else learned that size matters not. Even Paz Vizsla says to himself, "One does not speak unless one knows." I think that was him admitting to himself that Grogu's got skills. And then out of nowhere, a giant flying creature swoops in and flies off with Ragnar. What is this world? Why did the Mandalorians decide to settle on the planet of the dinosaurs? Go literally anywhere else. Have you heard of Pabu? I hear it's nice this time of year. Bo-Katan is able to track the creature in her ship and develops a plan to rescue the kid, and they head off, leaving Grogu safely back at the covert. And my first reaction to that was apprehension. I was afraid the Armorer might start to try to influence him on his own, but instead everything she shares with him is great. She remains a compelling character because I have such mixed feelings about her. I don't like her strict adherence to outdated rules. I still hope and think we are headed to a place where Din decides that there isn't just one way to live. We might reach that point if Grogu ever gets his own helmet, and Din might decide he doesn't want to never see his son's face again. The helmet rule needs to go. But for all of her rules, the Armorer is completely accepting of Grogu. I love that this child looks completely different from everyone else in the covert. His background couldn't be more different either. He was even trained by the Jedi, who she once referred to as a group of enemy sorcerers, but still she considers Grogu to be one of them. I like that aspect of the Armorer quite a bit. She teaches him about Mandalorian culture as she makes him a new piece of armor. She passes on lessons that build off of what Kuil said way back in Season 1. When speaking of IG-11, he talked about how droids are simply a reflection of those that program them, basically saying that a child is shaped by his or her parents. Our parents help create who we become, but so do our experiences. The Armorer says we all begin as raw ore. We refine ourselves through trials and adversity, and as the Forge hammers away, we get flashes of Grogu's past and the adversity that shaped him, just like we saw for Din in Season 1. And right away, we heard a name that made me perk up. Get him to Kelleran. A group of Jedi protect Grogu from clone troopers in the midst of Order 66, shot down one by one until he reaches Kelleran Beck, the Sabered Hand, played by Ahmed Best. It's been over 2 years since we heard that someone took Grogu from the Jedi Temple. We've been speculating since then about who it could be. Quinlan Vos, Barriss Offee, who could it be? I don't think I would have guessed Kelleran Beck in a million years, and I was over the moon to hear his name and see his face for so many reasons. You can bet I'll be doing a whole video about this scene, but Kelleran was the host of the game show Jedi Temple Challenge, and the canon-ish part of it was that Beck oversaw Padawans as they passed the trials to becoming Jedi Knights, and his students nicknamed him the Sabered Hand. He was played by Ahmed Best, who also played Jar Jar Binks and went through hell for his portrayal of that character. He has seen an outpouring of support in recent years. Being a part of his standing ovation at Star Wars Celebration 2019 is unforgettable. I thought it was really nice that he got to play Beck on Jedi Temple Challenge and that he had input into the character's backstory. But getting to see Ahmed Best's face as those elevator doors opened, getting to see why he is called the Sabered Hand, that entire sequence was so undeniably awesome. It brought a tear to my eye. This is an actor who went through his own trials and adversity and came through the other side stronger, and I was so happy to see him. Again, I'm going to talk more about that in another video because the character and the actor deserve more focus. But back to the story of the episode itself, we are being shown that the Jedi and the Mandalorians aren't so different, because 4 Jedi gave their lives to protect the life of a child, and then another one, a Jedi Master, who had dedicated his life to teaching the next generation, put his life in harm's way to make sure those sacrifices were not in vain. He gets Grogu to a Nubian ship and jumps to hyperspace. The story is incomplete. Maybe Grogu was taken to Naboo, maybe somewhere else, but I'm glad and also a little terrified to know he reached some level of safety with Keller and Beck, although I'm also terrified for what tragedy the future might hold for the character. Back in the present day, our Mandalorian heroes work to rescue Ragnar from the flying creature's nest. We get confirmation that the young Mandalorian is Paz Vizsla's son as they attempt to save him from becoming a meal for 3 of the flying beast's babies. It's largely a cool action sequence that has Bo and Din working together to return Ragnar to his father. Paz gives his thanks, and he and Din say, "This is the way," to one another. And there is a reason that phrase sometimes rings more true. When we first heard it spoken in Chapter 3, it was all about the rules of the covert. And we were all like, ooh, that's a fun new thing to say as Star Wars fans. It still is, but sometimes all the Mandalorians parrot the armorer and say this is the way together, and it feels hollow. It feels culty, because they're talking about stuff that doesn't matter, like their helmets. But at the end of Chapter 3, Paz tells Din, this is the way, as they all work to protect Grogu. They repeat it together after rescuing Ragnar. Din tells Bo-Katan this is the way when she speaks of her father dying to protect Mandalore. It rings true when they're talking about universal ideas, protecting life, protecting the next generation. Those aren't just Mandalorian ideals or Jedi ideals, they're ideals everyone should have. It's such a real-world concept, too. It's a trap religions fall into all the time. People will cherry-pick which rules are important to them and which aren't, and they'll focus so hard on that aspect of their religion that they forget about the core of what their actual faith means. Love your neighbor as yourself. People are more important than your rules. All people, not just the ones who share your faith or look just like you. The armorer and her covert obviously have a strong focus on outdated rules. That bugs me, but it's great to see that they haven't fully lost sight of what's important. I'd love to see them all eventually say, this is the way, collectively, about something important with their helmets off. We've seen them being accepting of different backgrounds and people like Grogu, and I love that they even take in the baby creatures, because it would have felt off to have a story all about protecting children only to turn around and abandon a bunch of hungry baby animals. Not that they're gonna train them to walk the way, but I expect they will be treated with respect and probably as mounts when they're large enough. Grogu, Ragnar, and even the baby creatures can all be considered foundlings in this episode, but our final scenes are about Bo-Katan, and I think she fits the title of the chapter as well. She starts off the story as a bit of an outsider, watching on the sidelines, but she takes a leadership role in Ragnar's rescue, because even though she claims to not walk the way, that's a universally understood idea, protecting kids. Along the way, she learns very simple things about how to eat and who gets the honor of staying by the fire. She loses a piece of her armor, and so the armorer makes her a new pauldron, like a foundling. She trades her blue piece for some shiny new, unpainted Beskar, which I think could be a sign that she is continuing further into the cult, replacing part of what made her stand out with something more generic. But I also like that she took the signet of the mythosaur on the new piece, a symbol the armorer describes as belonging to all Mandalorians, a universal symbol. So maybe joining the Children of the Watch will change Bo a bit, it might help her restore her faith, but maybe she will also help change them, help them be less rigid. I don't know where all of this is going right now, but I'm into it. I also don't know where the actual mythosaur storyline is going, but I'm glad Bo isn't keeping it to herself anymore. Although it's frustrating that the armorer doesn't believe her when she says she saw one, or maybe she does believe and has her own ideas for it. Again, I don't know, but I'm excited to find out. This may have been the shortest episode of the series, but it was still jam-packed full of great stuff. A lot happened, and I haven't even mentioned Carl Weathers' direction, but he did a great job. I think that's all I've got to say about the Foundling for now, so let me know what you thought of the episode in the comments, and come back at 6 p.m. Eastern for even more discussion in our live after show with our guests from Thank the Maker podcast. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel to keep up with all our Mandalorian Season 3 coverage, and consider checking out our Patreon page, where we're releasing video reactions and audio commentaries for every new episode. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.